Hello everyone, I'm Jen Ah with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We're here to talk about the latest story from our investigative team. Some extended stay motels along Boulder Highway have generated high police activity over the last 5 years, on par with even the Strip's largest hotel casinos. The three properties, the Suites, Sienna Suites, and Sportsman's Royal Manor, are some of the largest housing complexes in southern Nevada. According to the I-Team's analysis of Las Vegas police service call data, officers have logged about 44,000 service calls and patrols at 3 motels since 2017. Now, despite the high volume of police activity, only one of these properties saw a dramatic drop in calls. Joining me now is Review-Journal's investigative reporter, Michael Scott Davidson. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Your team talked with the Metro Police Department officials and national policing experts on the high number of calls to these motels. What did they reveal about what works and doesn't work?
We interviewed both Las Vegas police that are actually conducting these patrols and responding to these calls for service, and also national experts from outside our state. And they presented two very different philosophies about how they would approach this. Here in Las Vegas, our police department, of these 44,000 visits, about 30,000 of those are actually logged as officer-initiated patrols, where they're choosing to go to these properties, not responding to any call for service, but actually choosing to be there and be a visible presence. And our police department told us that they focused those patrols on areas that they feel really need the extra attention to make residents feel safer, to deter crime from even happening, and to foster a better relationship between police and residents. But our national policing experts said that while that's a noble endeavor, that they're worried that that's going to be a very big use of publicly taxpayer-funded resources. The police department, in this example, going to a very small amount of properties, and they questioned whether the motel owners and operators should be doing more themselves to actually cut down on crime and make residents feel safer without consuming so much of this public resource.
That is a good point. And as we mentioned earlier, one of these motels did see a drop in police calls. That was Sportsman's Royal Manor. So what happened at that property?
Sportsman Royal Manor has seen a drop in police calls for service of basically they're at half last year of what they were 5 years ago, and it's dropped every year since 2017. And that property received a lot of police patrols, just like Sienna Suites and the Suites, which are all on Boulder Highway. But the difference is what happened at Sportsman Royal Manor is our police department and Clark County government officials threatened to shut that property down due to the high level of violent crime that they said was happening there. And that really, they said, spurred change of the property. Not only were police patrolling there and making arrests there, but the property owner themselves told us that they invested a lot of money to make that property more secure. They fenced its entire perimeter. They have license plate readers that they're installing that are going to see who's coming and going. They have security patrolling there that are going up and making sure that people that are hanging out there actually live there. And they said that they've just really overhauled and improved their security as a company at this site.
And why haven't the other 2 motels overhauled the same way as Royal Sportsman's Manor? I mean, all these calls, as you mentioned, come as a cost to taxpayers. So what are local officials doing to address this problem?
So at the Suites and Sienna Suites, the Suites did not get back to us. Sienna Suites says that it has improved security at its property. However, it has not seen the same dramatic decrease in calls for service that Sportsman Royal Manor has. And what's different at these 2 properties, the Suites and Sienna Suites, is that they did not face the challenge to their business license, the threatening of closure by public officials. Now, the experts that we spoke to outside of Nevada said that in other cities that they've seen that this has been a very pivotal step towards actually getting calls for service to decrease, to basically draw a line in the sand and say, if you're attracting this much police attention, that you need to, we expect that you will change things and we will see a drop in calls for service to your property, or we may come in and shut you down. And that's been the difference at this property versus the other 2.
And this is really interesting. The reporting team actually rented a room at Sienna Suites for a whole week to see what would happen, what they would witness. You were there, Michael Scott. What did you see?
Well, I think what was really interesting staying at Sienna Suites was just seeing, first of all, how large the property is. It's got about 600 rental units. That's a very large property for Southern Nevada. Also, even though it's a motel, an extended stay motel where people can rent a week at a time, there seemed to be a lot of families that were living there, as their permanent residents. You could see children during the week getting on and off school buses that pulled up right to the complex, showing that they lived there and had lived there long enough to be attending school in the area. We saw people living there of all ages. It just seemed that the people that were living there weren't just there for a night or two or even 1 week, that many of them were there for months at a time, if not longer.
So it sounds like these people at these motels were not visitors, but locals.
That seems to be true, and it's the case for a lot of extended stay motels in Southern Nevada, where affordable housing is very scarce and hard to come by, and things like security deposits, credit score checks, background checks might preclude some people from renting at a more traditional apartment with a year-long lease. That these weeklies can actually be a real lifeline for individuals or families looking to rent.
It's very interesting. Thanks so much for talking with us today, Michael Scott.
Thanks for having me.
You just heard from Review Journal's investigative reporter Michael Scott Davidson. You can read more about these extended stay motels at lvrj.com/investigations. You can also download our RJ mobile app to get news alerts sent right to your phone. And make sure to check out our weekday newscasts, 7 at 7 a.m. and p.m., available on Roku, Apple TV, YouTube, all your streaming platforms. I'm Jen Ah. Thanks for joining us.